In the deep silence of the galaxy where stars burned and died without witness, a signal slipped through the void, a strange pulse of sound and code unlike anything recorded before the great sensors of the older races detected it first. A simple, repeating pattern carrying a message wrapped in human language mixed with mathematics. It was not meant as a threat, not even as a challenge. It was a signal of expansion, an announcement that humanity was moving outward faster than anyone expected. Stations were rising around moons. Fleets were forming in orbit trade routes lit across the dark. But what drew fear from the few who studied it closely was the speed humans had not crawled into space. They had leapt as if driven by fire. One council. Scientists stood before the Galactic Council and warned them, saying this species does not grow at a normal pace. They adapt too quickly. Their technology leaps forward like lightning. They are already beyond the limits of what should be possible. His voice trembled as he added, "If they are not guided, if they are not contained, they will not stop." Yet his words were met with laughter across the chambers, the elders of countless worlds dismissing Earth as a young planet filled with creatures. Barely past their own wars, the Dominion lords sneered that prey always runs fast before it collapses. The merchant guilds mocked that humans had no fleets worth fearing, no alliances worth naming, no empires to stand behind them. What danger could? Such children pose in the vast silence of the galaxy. The warnings were written into reports buried in archives forgotten within cycles. Yet beyond the borders of the Council's safe stars, colonies began to vanish outposts, silent without explanation. Merchant convoys cut off their last transmissions filled with static and fear. One message escaped a single voice, breaking through the void, whispering they are coming before falling silent. Many believed it was pirates, others claimed it was internal, rebellion. But those who looked deeper knew the truth. Humanity had started to move. They were building fleets not vast but disciplined. They were not expanding blindly. They were choosing targets carefully, probing defenses, measuring weaknesses, and when they struck, they did not linger. They erased opposition with precision and vanished back into the dark. The Xylar Dominion received the same warnings from their spies' reports of colonies burned by strange new weapons ships, too fast to track, too cunning to corner. But the warlords scoffed at the idea their empire had ruled for millennia, and no primitive world would ever change that. Still, the signal spread, echoing across the stars, a constant reminder of a species that would not stop. Repeating its pattern, carrying with it the unspoken promise of more to come in hidden laboratories. Human scientists pushed boundaries, breaking rules of physics long held by other races, experimenting with stolen fragments of alien tech reverse, engineering weapons at a speed that defied logic. They were not bound by tradition, not held back by fear of failure. Every setback became a lesson, every loss a design for improvement. The warnings were clear. The humans would adapt faster than any calculation could predict, yet no one listened. The Galactic Council continued to argue. Dismissing every voice that called for caution, they spoke of treaties of politics of maintaining balance, while across the void, the balance was already tilting. They sent observers who returned shaken, describing fleets of humans drilling with ruthless discipline, describing colonies that turned barren moons into fortresses within months. Still, the Council shrugged, claiming these were exaggerations born from fear. One elder declared proudly, "No young race has ever threatened the old order. Humanity will break upon our strength as all the others did." Before the chamber applauded, yet their applause felt thin, even in their own ears. For in the shadows, a truth was forming. Humanity did not see itself as prey. Humanity had never learned to accept chains when struck. They struck back when mocked. They grew sharper when ignored. They built in silence. The signal they sent into the void was not just noise. It was a declaration. We are here and we are coming. And though the elders still turned away, though the Dominion still laughed, though the galaxy still believed itself untouchable, the first stone had already been thrown. The first spark already. Burning soon, the fire would spread until no world could ignore it. And by the time they realized the danger, it would already be too late, for the warnings had been given, and they had been ignored. At the edge of the spiral arm where the stars burned, cold and distant, the first true clash came. The Galactic Council had dismissed the warnings, and the Xylar Dominion had sent what they called a peacekeeping force, a fleet of heavy cruisers and escorts meant to intimidate, to remind Earth that power belonged to the old empires. They entered human space expecting submission, their commanders already drafting speeches of surrender. Yet when their sensors swept across the void, they found nothing. No welcoming fleet, no pleas for mercy, only silence. The silence of a hunter waiting unseen among the dark, for humanity had been preparing. They knew they could not meet the Dominion in open strength, so they chose shadows instead. The asteroid belt became their shield. Debris fields became their armor. Hidden platforms powered down until the right moment. Engineers had rigged rocks with explosives. Miners had turned drills into railguns. Every piece of metal became a weapon. And when the alien ships drifted deeper into the belt, confident in their superiority, the trap was sprung mines hidden in stone, lit with fury, tearing through escorts. Railguns fired from rocks they had dismissed as lifeless fighters launched from hidden bases, weaving like sparks through the void. The Xylar ships staggered. Shields shattered as ambushes tore them apart. The aliens fought back with plasma storms cutting through stone and steel, but their fire found only empty echoes, while human ships darted between cover, vanishing before retaliation could land. Commanders shouted in confusion as systems failed their formation, collapsing under an enemy they could not see. And when human Marines finally boarded the first cruiser, the true terror was revealed. The Xylar expected fragile prey. Yet what came through the airlocks were armored soldiers, faces, hard eyes, burning with fury. They fought with a brutality that stunned the defenders, grenades lighting corridors, rifles hammering with relentless rhythm. Every corner turned into a slaughter. The humans did not yield, even when cut down. They crawled forward, dragging themselves into the fight until the ship was theirs. The battle lasted hours, the void filled with fire, alien screams, and human resolve, when at last the surviving Dominion ships tried to retreat. They discovered their engines crippled by saboteurs. Drones had latched onto their hulls, tearing systems apart, and in the final moments, a single human broadcast cut through the static cold and measured, carrying across every channel. You were warned. Humanity does not kneel, and then silence followed only by the burning wreckage drifting through the belt. News of the clash spread faster than fire. The council chambers rang with disbelief at the reports. Entire Dominion cruisers gone, reduced to husks by a fleet. Barely half their size, whispers rose among the neutral species saying perhaps the warnings had not been madness after all. Perhaps Earth was different. The Dominion commanders tried to frame it as an accident, claiming their ships had been unlucky, claiming human tricks would not stand against true force. Yet behind their words, their fear was clear, for they had faced something they did not understand. Prey that hunted back on Earth. The victory was met not with celebration, but with grim determination. Shipyards roared louder, factories doubled their output. Engineers studied captured alien wreckage, pulling secrets from every broken panel. Soldiers trained harder, knowing the next wave would be larger. Humanity had survived the first test, but they knew the storm was only beginning, and that survival alone was not enough. They would have to strike harder. They would have to spread fear into the hearts of their enemies before the enemy consumed them. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion warlords sat in silence in their crystal halls, their claws clicking nervously as reports piled in, officers whispering of human ghosts in the dark fleets striking from nowhere, vanishing like shadows. Some dismissed it as chance, others as trickery, but deep within, they all felt the same unease. The galaxy had changed the moment humanity had drawn blood. The warnings had been ignored, and now it was too late to unhear them. And so the survivors of that first battle carried a message home, etched into memory, burned into fear. They said the humans do not fight as others do. They do not retreat. They do not beg. They adapt. They are predators, not prey. And though the Dominion swore vengeance, though the Council still clung to denial, the truth had already taken root. The galaxy had underestimated Earth, and now every star, every world, every empire would pay the price for that arrogance. The Dominion wasted no time after their first defeat in the asteroid belt. Their pride had been wounded, their reputation scarred, and in the halls of their empire, such humiliation could not stand. Fleets were gathered from distant sectors, vast armadas, of steel and fire forged to overwhelm and erase the upstart humans once and for all. Yet, even as their banners stretched across the void, they underestimated what they faced, for humanity did not wait, cowering on Earth. Humanity moved like a storm, already spreading outward, preparing traps upon traps, their colonies turning barren moons into fortresses, hidden drones drifting in the void like silent watchers waiting for prey. The humans had tasted victory, and now they were building for war, with a hunger the galaxy had never seen. Across the Council worlds, voices of unease grew louder. One by one, ambassadors rose to remind the chamber of the ignored warnings, recounting what scouts and survivors whispered in private, that humans did. Not fight for territory or conquest alone, they fought for survival, and when a species fights for survival, it will stop at nothing. Yet the chamber still erupted in laughter when one elder dared to claim that humanity might be unstoppable. Another sneered that no race can defy the weight of history. Empires rise and fall as they always have. These humans are nothing but a flicker in the night. But even as they mocked, their claws tapped nervously against the polished stone, their tails flicked. Uneasily, their instincts whispering a truth their mouths would not speak. Far from politics, deep in the black, the next human strike came, not with warning but with silence. A Dominion supply fleet vanished without trace, only drifting wreckage found. Weeks later, hulls torn open in strange new ways, scorched by weapons the Dominion had never seen before. Then communication relays along the border failed, entire stations, darkened, their signals gone. When scouts were finally sent, they found the relays captured and reforged into human listening posts, bristling with weapons that were already turned outward toward Dominion space. The realization spread like poison. Humanity was not defending. Humanity was advancing on Earth and her colonies. The fever of war had taken hold. Factories thundered day and night. Engineers worked with fury, reverse engineering alien tech, stolen from the wrecks in the belt, already turning plasma into new weapons, already bending alien shield designs into human. Ships, soldiers trained in brutal silence, preparing for battles they knew would be worse than anything, yet fought. What drove them was not conquest, but rage. Mars still burned in their memory, the massacre of their families still carved into their hearts. No human commander needed to give long speeches. The will to fight had already been forged in the blood spilled on red soil. The Dominion fleet finally arrived in force, swarming into human space like a wave, their ships gleaming their weapons. Hot with fury, their commanders certain that no tricks, no shadows could withstand sheer overwhelming strength, they descended upon a human colony on Titan, expecting a swift and brutal victory. Instead, they found the skies alive with fire. Titan had been turned into a fortress, railguns buried under ice batteries hidden in valleys, drones rising in swarms too dense to count. The battle that followed was not one the Dominion had prepared for. Humans fought from every angle, every corridor, every shadowground. Troops ambushed invaders in tunnels where heavy weapons could not fit while in orbit. Smaller human ships darted through the vast Dominion formations, striking engines vanishing before counterfire could land. It was chaos. It was relentless. It was war. For every human ship destroyed, 2 Dominion ships fell. For every human soldier slain, 10 more pressed forward. The Dominion commanders screamed for discipline, but discipline could not stop fear. The humans fought as if death itself was Nothing, as if every loss was already accounted for their adaptability, tearing apart strategy after strategy until the Dominion retreat was ordered. But retreat came too late, for the humans had planned it too. Mines lit in the paths of fleeing ships. Traps closing like jaws, whole cruisers vanishing into fire. The survivors limped away, broken, battered, their confidence shattered. The reports that reached the Council after Titan were no longer brushed aside. Whispers became roars. Ambassadors spoke. Of humans who were building faster than anyone thought possible, of colonies that could become fortresses in months, of fleets that seemed to grow from nothing. One merchant lord whispered in horror, "They are not bound by limits," and in the silence that followed, no one laughed this time, for in their hearts, they knew the old balance was cracking, and a new force had entered the galaxy. On Titan, beneath the broken ice, the surviving humans raised their banners not in triumph, but in defiance. They knew the war was only beginning, and the message they broadcast across the stars echoed like thunder. Humanity cannot be stopped. Humanity will never kneel. And though the Council and the Dominion still clung to pride, still swore vengeance, the truth had already been written in fire and wreckage. The galaxy had ignored the warnings, and now the price of arrogance was only beginning to be paid. The galaxy had always believed itself predictable. Empires rose and fell in cycles. Wars flared and ended in treaties. Power shifted from one species to another, but always within the same boundaries, always within the same rules. Yet with humanity, those rules were breaking the Dominion after Titan licked its wounds and swore vengeance there. Warlords gathered in their crystal chambers, vowing to crush Earth once and for all. They spoke of honor, of dominance, of restoring fear into those who had begun whispering doubt. Yet beneath their sharp words lay hesitation, for each report of the humans told of something different, of tactics that shifted faster than orders could be given, of weapons appearing only weeks after first being conceived, of soldiers who fought not for conquest, but for survival and vengeance. The Council called emergency sessions where ambassadors argued until their voices cracked. One faction demanded humanity be crushed before it spread further. Another whispered that alliance might be wiser, for no war could be endless. No empire could sustain itself forever. But the loudest voices, the proudest voices, drowned out the cautious ones, declaring that humanity was reckless and weak, that its victories were luck, that the Dominion had simply blundered, and that the next offensive would erase the doubt. Yet even as they spoke, fear grew, for in the shadows of their chambers, more neutral species began to watch Earth with curiosity, some even sending secret messages of respect and quiet offers of aid. Meanwhile, in human space, the colonies hardened. Into steel, every mine became a factory. Every asteroid, a shipyard. The war had united. Earth's scattered factions, old disputes erased by the memory of Mars. Every hand turned to the same purpose. Survival fleets of new design rolled from hidden docks, not massive like Dominion cruisers, but fast, deadly, and impossible to pin down artificial intelligence programs, coordinated swarms of drones. Engineers adapted alien shielding into layered defenses. Soldiers drilled in brutal close quarters, preparing for battles where the enemy would tower above them. Every failure, every scar, every death became a lesson woven into the next plan. It was during this time that the Dominion launched its boldest assault, yet fleets larger than anything humanity had seen poured into Sol, not to test, not to intimidate, but to erase Earth itself. They struck with fire, raining plasma on defenses, shattering orbital platforms, burning cities from orbit, and for a moment it seemed as though humanity had reached its end. But what the Dominion had not counted on was Earth itself becoming the trap. The skies over the blue planet lit with fury. As weapons hidden in low orbit rose to life, satellites turned into cannons, drones swarmed in coordinated waves. Railguns hidden in the very crust of the planet erupted with thunder. The Dominion ships reeled as their formations broke, and then came the counterstrike. Human fleets hidden on the dark side of the moon emerged, engines burning like fire. Cutting through Dominion lines with precision ships darted into gaps created by the chaos, unleashing torpedoes at close range. Boarding parties launched directly onto alien hulls. The humans were not defending. They were dismantling piece by piece. Commanders in the Dominion screamed orders, yet none could hold their fleets together against such relentless fury. What was meant to be an erasure turned into a massacre. But the price for Earth was terrible. Cities burned, oceans boiled where plasma had struck. Millions died in the firestorm, yet even in that devastation, humanity did not falter. Rescue ships flew through the bombardment, pulling survivors from the flames. Engineers patched defenses even as the sky still burned. Soldiers dragged their wounded forward, refusing to retreat. The Dominion expected despair. Instead, they found a fury greater than before. When the battle finally ended, Dominion fleets were broken again, their survivors fleeing into the void, leaving wreckage orbiting Earth. The galaxy gasped. The impossible had happened again. Not only had Earth survived, but the Dominion had been driven back from humanity's very homeworld. Whispers spread louder than ever across the stars. If humanity could not be crushed at its heart, then what hope was there of crushing it anywhere? In the aftermath, Earth's leaders did not rest. They sent a message across the stars, carried on every frequency, on every captured channel. It said simply, "We warned you, and still you came. Humanity will never bow." The words echoed across empires, chilling even the proudest rulers because they knew it was not empty speech. It was a promise carved in blood. The fires of Earth still smoldered, but humanity did not mourn. In silence, they rebuilt with a speed that shocked even themselves. Entire cities rose again in months. Factories doubled their output. Shipyards expanded across moons and asteroids as, if the ruins only fueled their will to rise higher, the Dominion thought destruction would break the human spirit. Yet every crater became a forge, every scar a symbol, and every child who lost a parent whispered the same vow. Never again. The galaxy watched with a mixture of awe and dread, seeing a species that had been pushed to the edge only to come back stronger than before. The Dominion, however, was not finished. Their pride had been carved too deeply for them to retreat warlords across. Their empire howled for revenge. Fleets larger than any ever gathered in their history were called from every corner. Vast armadas bristling with weapons engines burning across light years. Their plan was simple: crush humanity by sheer weight. If one fleet failed, then 10 would succeed. They believed no enemy could stand against endless waves of fire. Yet in their arrogance, they failed to see what humanity had become. For humans had stopped thinking like prey. They had begun thinking like predators. The first move did not come from the Dominion. It came from the humans. Silent fleets slipped across the border, vanishing into the dark. Their ships smaller, their weapons fewer, but their minds sharper. They struck supply convoys, tearing apart fuel ships and cargo freighters, then vanished before Dominion escorts could react. Entire war fronts stalled because the Dominion's vast fleets had no fuel to move, no food for their soldiers, no parts for their machines. Whispers spread through the Dominion ranks: what kind of enemy strikes not at the sword, but at the hand that holds it? But that was only the beginning. Colonies near Dominion space were evacuated, not abandoned, but stripped bare. Every resource, every tool taken, then scorched, until nothing usable remained. When the Dominion fleets arrived hungry for conquest, they found only empty shells, lifeless rocks with no victory to claim, no glory to taste. Then came the traps, stations rigged to explode drones hidden in the debris, fields, mines buried deep in the gravity wells. Human commanders turned entire sectors into death zones. The Council, which had once mocked humanity, now split apart, half still clinging to their arrogance, half whispering in growing fear. The humans are not just fighting. They are adapting faster than any species. Before they take every lesson from defeat and twist it into strength, they use every scar as fuel for their fury. One elder of a neutral race warned the chamber, if this war continues, the Dominion will not just lose. It will collapse and humanity will rise in its ashes. But the chamber fell into chaos because pride and fear clashed louder than reason. Meanwhile, humanity pushed deeper, their fleets no longer content with defense, struck directly into Dominion space worlds that had never seen. War suddenly burned, human ships appeared from shadows, unleashed fire, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Dominion citizens who had believed themselves untouchable watched. Their skies turn red, watched their fleets shatter in orbit. The illusion of their empire's strength cracked for the first time in generations. Among the Dominion warlords, doubt grew louder. Some began questioning whether the war was worth the price. Whispers of retreat were silenced with executions, but fear spread faster than commands. Discipline faltered. Soldiers who once believed themselves invincible now saw humans not as weak prey, but as hunters who could strike from anywhere. Stories spread of human soldiers boarding massive Dominion warships, fighting in brutal close combat, refusing to yield even when outnumbered, refusing to die until their enemies bled with them. It was not just war, it was terror. For humanity, the cost was heavy. Every battle claimed lives, every victory carved more names into stone memorials, yet the rage did not fade. It only burned brighter earth, and Mars had taught them that surrender meant annihilation. And so, they would not surrender. Not now, not ever. And as their fleets pressed deeper into enemy space, humanity's leaders gathered in silence, not to argue, but to decide their next step. They looked beyond survival, beyond vengeance. Their question was simple: if the Dominion could not be stopped, should humanity stop at defense, or should they break the Empire forever? That decision hung heavy as their fleets moved closer to the heart of Dominion power. The galaxy trembled because for the first time the war no longer seemed like a contest. Between equal foes, it seemed like a storm gathering, one that would sweep away everything in its path. The Dominion had ignored the warnings, the Council had dismissed the danger. But now the truth was clear. Humanity was not a flicker of rebellion. Humanity was a fire spreading across the stars, and no one could tell where it would end. The Dominion had always ruled through fear, its fleets vast, its armies countless, its warlords merciless. Yet now that fear was slipping away for the first time. In living memory, the Dominion was not the hunter, but the hunted. Whispers spread through its colonies that humanity could not be stopped. Whispers that turned into panic when human fleets struck deeper into their space. Each raid more daring than the last. Planets that had never known war suddenly burned, their skies filled with fire, and their fleets shattered in hours. Human ships moved like shadows, striking supply lines, shipyards, and even communication hubs, then vanishing before Dominion reinforcements could arrive. The Empire's heart began to choke from within. The Dominion warlords raged in their crystal halls, summoning fleet after fleet. Yet the more ships they threw into battle, the more they seemed to lose. Their massive armadas were designed for intimidation, for crushing weaker enemies in open war. But against humanity's tactics, they became clumsy targets. Humans did not fight fair. They fought with desperation, with invention, with a cruelty born from survival. They turned asteroids into guided weapons. They lured fleets into black holes and gravity wells. They hijacked Dominion comm signals, turning orders into chaos until entire squadrons fired upon their allies in confusion. It was not war as the Dominion understood. It was something far worse. Meanwhile, in human space, unity grew sharper. Every colony, every factory, every scientist worked for one cause. Survival had become expansion, and expansion had become vengeance. Earth itself, though still scarred, burned. Brighter than ever, cities rebuilt with speed. Starship yards multiplied across moons, drone factories hummed day and night. soldiers trained in brutal conditions preparing for fights where they would always be outnumbered and yet never outwilled. The memory of Mars, the burning skies of Earth, and the millions lost lived in every human heart, every scar, a promise, every name carved into stone, a vow that the Dominion would pay until the last star. Among the neutral empires, the tone shifted. Once mocking voices turned into fearful silence. Ambassadors who had once dismissed humanity as reckless now spoke in whispers. Some suggested alliances, others begged for neutrality. A few even dared to send covert aid, for they had begun to understand the truth. If humanity survived, the Dominion would fall, and when it did, those who had stood aside might be next. The galaxy watched and waited, uncertain whether to fear humanity's wrath or admire its unbreakable spirit. But inside the Dominion, cracks began to widen. Colonies once loyal now questioned their rulers. Trade routes collapsed as convoys vanished under human raids. Uprisings flared as suppressed species saw the empire faltering and dared to rise again. The Dominion's warlords tried to tighten their grip, unleashing harsher punishments, sending more troops. But the tighter they clenched, the more control slipped through their fingers. For every world they crushed, two more whispered humanity's name as a spark of hope. The turning point came when humanity launched its boldest strike, yet not at the border, not at supply lines, but deep into Dominion space. A coordinated assault across multiple systems at once. Dominion fleets scrambled to respond, but for every battle, they thought they were winning. Another world fell behind them. Human commanders played the Empire like a game of chess, sacrificing pawns to draw out massive fleets, then striking at undefended strongholds. By the time the warlords realized their mistake, human ships were already too deep to dislodge. The galaxy gasped as news spread. Dominion strongholds falling in days, their massive fortresses reduced to rubble by swarms of railgun fire and drone assaults. Human soldiers fighting hand to hand in the smoking halls of their enemies, leaving nothing but wreckage. Behind, stories spread faster than fire of humans who fought until their last breath, of commanders who led from the front, of civilians who armed themselves rather than be conquered. The image of humanity shifted from stubborn survivors to unstoppable conquerors. The Dominion, however, refused to admit defeat. Warlords gathered, swearing to crush humanity with their greatest weapon fleets, assembled into an armada so vast it blotted out suns. Their plan was simple: draw the humans into one final battle, overwhelm them by sheer scale, and erase them forever. What they did not know was that humanity was already preparing for that moment. Every raid, every strike, every trap had not just been survival, it had been calculation. Humans had been studying their enemy, learning every tactic, every weakness, every arrogance, and now they were ready. As fleets massed on both sides, the galaxy held its breath. The outcome of the next clash would decide everything. If humanity broke, the Dominion would recover. If the Dominion fell, humanity would rise like a storm with no rival across the stars in the silence of the void as ships moved into position.